Liberals like to talk about how good they are at science, but they don't know fuck about math. They don't know dick. And it's not even just math; it's just basic business principles. And there's two real cases right now that just emphasize that. They really just highlight it. They put a little halo around this dead zone in the minds of liberals, which is the Rachel Maddow scandal, which I already did a video on today, and the Obamacare issue, which I've done a video about 2 days ago. And the funny part is that they keep thinking that somehow all of it's going to add up, as if for some reason there's something colossally wrong with the way that Donald Trump's finances are being structured, or the way that the insurance industry is structuring their finances, as if for some reason something's going to happen and it's all just going to come crashing down. They don't understand it. If those people had been so financially pinheaded as they are alleging, that they can't make any money and that they're really taking lots of losses, then they wouldn't be in the positions they are today, whether it's Donald Trump or it's these greedy insurance companies. And they've known it's the contradiction. It's what is it that funny contradiction that people always bring up, the Schrodinger's principle? There's the one I always see, that there's the lazy immigrant that steals your job. It's a contradiction. If he's so lazy, why is he taking your job? Why wouldn't the boss want you instead of the immigrant if the immigrant's lazy? But in this case, it's on their end, since they believe in their heart. That's what they said during the election. They said that Donald Trump would be so. If you saw his tax returns, it would reveal A, that he doesn't give much to charity. B, it would reveal that he doesn't make as much money as he stated, or that he's not as rich as he stated. Two different things: income versus accumulated wealth. April Ryan actually made a tweet today, which she doesn't let the public see, but somebody found it, where she alleged because he only made $150 million in 2005, he's not really a billionaire. That's real bright, April Ryan, supposedly an independent journalist for Americans' urban radio networks. Listen, so that means that if you don't make $30 an hour, that means that you must be, there's no way that you could possibly be able to afford a house. If you don't make $30 an hour, that means that you can turn down your mortgage. Okay, the income of that year is not the same thing as his accumulated wealth. I mean, it's that easy. That's why it's a 2005 tax return. So there was that one. The other thing they don't understand, this is going back to business principles. How do you cover a budget shortfall? The only logical way is to raise revenue, or to borrow and loan against your assets or something. There's ways that the government is all the time loaning money from China, loaning money from all these other crediting countries. What is it? Switzerland, I think, offers us credit. We get credit from private banks even, I think, sometimes. The world banking system is based on loaning, and that's the way it's been for gosh, I mean, it's been centuries, millennia, maybe even. That's the way it works. When you can't raise enough money to take a certain undertaking, you borrow money. And this guy was arguing with this week, kept saying, universal health care. First of all, he didn't want to have to defend Obamacare, even though he was trying to. He was trying so hard. He was saying, it's not perfect, but, what we really need is universal health care. That's not a defense of Obamacare, because Obamacare, as he knew very well, is not universal health care. And he couldn't explain the real reason that Obamacare needed to be defended because he doesn't understand Obamacare. He doesn't understand what the promises are that were broken. That you, if you wanted to keep your doctor or plan, you could keep them. That healthcare premiums would go lower, not rise at lower rates, but go lower. He was saying the premiums would go lower. Okay, it doesn't matter if it didn't increase to the rate that it would have without Obamacare. The plan, the goal was to have it go lower. What are the other promises? That there would be more competition in the market. It's been the exact opposite. More insurance companies have left the marketplace, especially under Obamacare. Who's to say there might have been insurance companies that have left health insurance entirely? Okay, so it's not true. It just is not true. And they don't have a way to defend it. All they want to say is, well, the single-payer system is really the way to go. So we should keep Obamacare. So therefore, we're going to keep a bad system that doesn't work, okay, on the pretext that your system, which is not going to pass, would work better. Okay, that's really great. I need some of this mood juice just to get over that. That's just mind-numbingly dumb. And then when you go to the universal health care issue, they can't figure out that, you know, what I was saying earlier, that if your costs exceed the budgeted funds that you've given to it, the funds that you've allocated towards healthcare, because there's a healthcare budget. If you're running the healthcare system under, you know, a government mandate, as in every country, if your costs exceed your budget, then you have to cover the rest of those costs other ways. There's a couple ways. You can either cut treatments, you know, you could cut services, okay? That's one way. It's just like a business, okay? You're still operating something. It's still a business. It doesn't matter that it's for the benefit of anybody. It doesn't matter that it's owned by everybody, so to speak. It's still a business in terms of its operations. So you could cut services. That's one way. The other way would be to raise taxes, and the third way would be to borrow and increase your debt. So those are the ways to do it. And this guy, he just wouldn't admit it. It took me probably 12, 15 hours. He said he went to sleep, obviously, which you know, let's say he went to sleep for 5 hours. It doesn't mean that and I don't know, maybe he went to work. I don't think he worked that day. You know, that's his problem. You know, I'm not managing his schedule. And yet, even after he came back, it took him 4 or 5 restatements of the question to answer that, yeah, they would have to tax in order to cover the gap. Okay, so this would not make healthcare more affordable, because the more consistently the costs would increase, the costs of the actual treatments, the costs of, remember, they have to pay for lawsuits, for example, for malpractice. So they have to pay out. The government would have to pay out. They would have to pay out for complications of surgery. You know, if people have to stay longer in a hospital, that's a cost. Another thing that they would have to pay for would be unforeseen, you know, increases in treatment of certain illnesses. You know, that let's say there was an epidemic, for example, extreme example, that would spike healthcare costs by a major degree of magnitude. Okay, but not just that. If there was like a trend where cancer cases were increasing, or if there was a trend that, for example, somebody was talking earlier about AIDS in California might make a comeback because of some new legal maneuver that's going on. Let's say it were to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I believe in it. So those treatments, it would be boosted. This new problem would you know, an old problem would become a bigger problem. You simply would have to budget more towards that problem, because it would become a higher priority. Now that you're having more items under that category for that treatment, and those items aren't, it's not like they're cookie cutters. You know, each treatment for a given patient could be different. You know, you're talking about prioritizing that over a different treatment. Now a different person, let's say they have a certain treatment for hepatitis C. Okay, I'm definitely not the person to talk about medicine itself. I worked in the medical industry, a medical devices industry, but I'm not in any ways an authority on medicine. But let's say they were to have hepatitis C, but the incidences of hepatitis C were low. So then, in order to compensate for the boosts in the cases of case A, they would have had to take in budget dollars from the from the Part 4 illness B. Okay, you see what I'm saying? If hepatitis is low, the people that the hepatitis incidents are low, the people that have hepatitis would have less budget dollars dedicated to them as opposed to people with lymphoma, let's say, for AIDS, for whatever reason. That's the way it works, and that's the only way it can work. They can't keep the budget consistent for each and every item because it's a needs-based industry. And once people start flowing in and they need treatments for whatever illness it is, they can't just leave money for everything else. Everything has to be used, or else, according to him, the everything would be returned for a surplus. Now, that's not really going to happen. It never does happen. There has never been a country, to my knowledge, and I'll look it up, where there's been universal health care and then there's a surplus in the healthcare budget. Why? Because realistically, the system is built for, ideally is built for a rainy day. It's not built for a sunny day. You don't go out to the ocean in a little dinghy. You go out there in a huge galleon if you can. That's the way it happens. And liberals think, oh, if we can just get it squared away and everything and everything set up right, and the government to take everything over, it would be fine. Well, taking in millions and millions of illegal immigrants or refugees or whatever, that creates an influx of new customers, new low-income customers, people who potentially can't even pay in. And then you get into an entirely new problem, which is how do you force people to pay for a system, A, that they may not be registered in, and B, that they don't have any money for. If they don't have an income, if there are no jobs, and they can't pay for it. And then you get this problem that's been plaguing the systems in Europe, and it drives their percentage of the GDP dedicated to healthcare up, where you just keep getting a larger population of people that are taking out of the budget, as in using the healthcare budget by taking treatments or taking pharmaceuticals paid for by the budget. And that population is rising, and the population of people contributing is either stagnant or it's falling. It's very rare that you see one of these systems where the contributors rise and the utilizers fall, and that's the real problem. And that's why it's not sustainable. That's why liberals don't succeed when it comes to pitching these as business ideas. And in their own business, they would never propose this. Otherwise, they'd fail. That's just the way it is. Now, anyway, it's been a great struggle to really get through to these people, and I don't think it's really taken its hold. But we'll see what happens. I hope Trump does not see a success with this fraud bill that he's pushing, the American Health Care Act. I think that if it would be better for it to fail, it would be a victory for a lot of people that we were standing against Obamacare for years. But if it does pass, we're gonna have to see what happens. They might actually have to off-ramp it and do it gradually. I don't think it can work. That's just the way I think, and I'd have to study it more, and I will study it more, and we'll be talking about it more. Anyway, this is Ramon with Bold Like a Leopard. It's at Chef Leopard on Twitter, at Chef Leopard on Facebook, and also on YouTube, Bold Like a Leopard, struttingleopard.blogspot.com for the blog. And we'll have a great Thursday coming up, and we'll see you around the bend.